Hello, I'm Giles Brandreth, and I couldn't be more excited, delighted, thrilled, over the moon, a little bit over the top, because I'm going to introduce to you two of the most brilliant and remarkable people living in the world today. It's not exaggeration. I'm glad they're chuckling. Let me tell you who they are. In New York, it's Kathleen Turner, and here with me in London, it's Dame Maggie Smith. Yay! The nation is applauding. The world is applauding because this is a global event. I'm bringing you two together in aid of the Royal Theatrical Fund, which helps actors. But I want to know...
Started by Charles Dickens.
I
just thought I'd throw that.
That's
good.
Fantastic.
Yes, and Charles Dickens loved America, so that's international.
He was a big success.
And I want, during our conversation, to hear both your stories. I want to compare and contrast the pair of you, because you are two remarkable performers working around the world. But I want to begin by knowing how you happen to know one another, why we are here. Kathleen, how do you know Maggie Smith?
All right, I'm telling my version, Maggie. We were in theaters next to each other. I was in the Gielgud, playing the Mrs. Robinson in The Graduate, and Maggie was. We shared a common wall. She was in the Queens, doing Lady in the Van, and as an aside, I was told that the Gielgud chose the theater to be named after him because he said if they wanted him to if they gave him the Queens, they just call it the Old. Anyway, so our stage doors were on the same back alley, in Soho, and I would come out, and at that time, I was much more famous and coming out of film more recently. And so I had barriers set up, security barriers, so that I could interact and do autographs and everything, and people couldn't actually, get too close to me. And I would stand there handling these fans and watch Dame Maggie Smith come out of her back door, her stage door, and simply walk away, unmolested, unnoticed. It was shocking to me. Any case, one day I got a note delivered to my dressing room from Maggie that said, "May I borrow a barrier?" And I ran outside and I grabbed that damn barrier and I carried it over to her stage door and left a note saying, "Can we have dinner?" And so we started having dinner on Thursday nights because her matinee was on Wednesdays, and it became. I think we were both, lonely. My whole cast was British, so they had their lives, their families, their loves, and they would run off home, and I would go to an empty flat. And Maggie at that time, I think, was living alone also. And so we would go to the Ivy and pretty much close it down, as I recall.
Is that an accurate account?
That is absolutely accurate. But the barrier was because just for me to lean on, because there was nobody there to hold back. And we went to the Ivy, and there was we did stay very late at the Ivy. And I remember I can't remember what time it was, but anyway, Kathleen said to the waiter, "Could we have 2 glasses of Merceau, please?" We'd already had a bottle or 2, I think. But she said, "Could we have 2 glasses of Merceau?" And he said, "We do not sell Merceau by the glass." And Kathleen said, "Oh, yes, you do." And he did serve us.
And they did.
"Oh, yes, you do." And he was so charmed.
This was, of course, The Graduate was the show in which you had a brief naked moment And that may have been an additional reason. There was huge publicity about that, wasn't there?
I know.
That was the barriers.
Hence the barriers.
Hence the barrier.
And the brilliant business, possibly, I don't know. And also, you were rumoured to say that you were ready.
I told Alan Bennett that if I did that, there might be, I could use the barrier. That was what I said.
As I recall, you told you that you could rise from the van,
Yeah.
naked.
That's what I
And
had in mind.
That would sell more tickets. And there was this pause from him. And you said, oh, for God's sake, I'd look like a Ubangi.
So that was 20 years ago, but we want to go further back. I want to hear your stories right from the beginning. And I'm going, if I may, Kathleen, I want to start with you.
All right.
Where were you brought up? Who were your parents? What was your first memory? Take us right back to wherever it was. Was it Missouri you were born?
I was born in Missouri. I lived there all of 3 months then. My father was raised in Shanghai, China. The family were missionaries. And my mother was unbelievably brave to me. In 1947, she went to Washington, D.C., as many young women did to get a job. And she joined UNESCO, the United Nations security, relief.
Mm-hmm.
And she was posted directly to China. So my parents met, fell in love, and married in Shanghai. And that's where my father joined the diplomatic service when Americans liberated the city from the Japanese after having spent 5 years in a prison camp. In any case, my older sister was born in Tokyo, and then their next post was Antwerp. And then mom decided that she wanted to have a kid at home. So that turned out to be me. I was the only one born in the United States. But then we moved to Canada when I was a few months old. And one of my first memories, actually, is nursery school. I must have been 3 or going on 4, trooping up onto the stage in this little church where we had and every morning singing God Save the Queen.
Mm.
No.
So I never knew it was also an American song, or that there were American lyrics to it. So after Canada, we were being sent to Havana, Cuba, and my father was sent to Washington for an intensive language course. And so mom threw us in school in Springfield, Missouri. And the teachers, I had no idea where I was or what was going on. I was 4, and the teacher started playing, dun 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 dun, and I thought, oh, thank God, I know this. And I started belting out God Save the Queen. And she slammed her hands down on the piano and said, this is the United States of America. I didn't realize that it was also my country, 'tis of the sweet land of liberty. Nobody told me this. So next was Cuba, was Havana. And we were there until my father closed the embassy. And then we had a couple of years, I think, in Washington, D.C., and then 5 years in Caracas, Venezuela. And then when I was 13, we moved to London. And I started the American school in London, in St. John's Wood, and went through high school and graduated there in London. And that's where I fell in love with theater. That's where I determined I would be an actress.
Good. Stop. I'm going to stop you there because I want to hear what you actually went to see maybe in the 1960s. Tell me before I ask Maggie the same question, what were your parents like as people? Make them into characters for us, as though
All right.
if we knew them. What were they like?
I would say my mother was very brave, very gracious. Turned out, I think, without her expectation, to be a true diplomat's wife. Knew how to make people comfortable, conversation, anticipated. My father was very driven, very stern in many ways, brought up in his sort of religious background, but absolutely focused on honor, on duty, on everything that haunts me at night.
When you say haunts you at night, unwrap that a little bit.
Well, I was speaking to a friend, a very gracious and gentle friend the other day, talking about all the projects I had in my head that I wanted to do, and I felt I hadn't done enough of one all day. I could have done more. I should have done more. I could have, and he goes, "Who's judging you?" And I said, that's a very good question. I am now 66 years old, and really, truly, I think it's time I gave myself a break.
Maggie, you've got to answer the same question. Your first memories. You were born in Ilford, weren't you?
I was
in
born
Essex.
in Ilford. I'm an Essex girl. And I remember nothing about it at all. But that's not true. I remember, what was he called? David. We were very small people. I remember pushing him in a pond. We all ended up in Oxford because my father got a job with the public health people.
What did he do? What were your parents?
Well, they worked all the time. They worked for us to survive, but because I had two brothers, they were twins, so I was really more or less like an only child. And they were very, very bright. My brothers, one still is, but anyway, we moved to Oxford, and then my father worked in the public health, and my mother was a secretary. It was a place called, and I remember it was called the MPRD, and I cannot for the life of me think what it stood for. But it was in Cowley, where they made all those cars and things. So she worked there all the time, and my father worked at the School of Pathology. Then he moved to the School of Pathology. And I went to the local school, which was a church school. So I spent a great deal of time in church. And every morning we went into this little church, St. James Church. And it was lonely because it was the war, and it was pretty bleak. So I just seem to remember spending an awful lot of time on my own.
And
doing, household. Just used to iron shirts and things like that.
And what sort of people were they, your parents? Do you remember them with affection? Were they decent
Yeah,
people?
yes, I do remember them with affection, but I really didn't get to know them very well because they just weren't there. My mother was Scots. She was born in Glasgow, and my father was a Geordie. And they met apparently on a train coming to London. And I got to know my father very well because my mother had died. And he was the gentlest, sweetest person. He was terribly nervous, very, very nervous. And my mother was she could be quite fierce, but I think it was because survival. You know, they both had to struggle really, really hard.
And when you were at school, did you have thought? Why did you think of the theatre as the thing to do?
I've no idea. I honest to God, I have no idea. I mean, it was school. It was the teacher I had who was absolutely wonderful, and of course there were school plays. I mean, I went to a sort of rather grand private school first of all, and anyway, and I ended up at the Oxford High School, and there was a wonderful teacher there called Dorothy Bartholomew. And I tell you, Miriam knew her, Miriam Margulies. And I don't know. I just was determined. I didn't really see any plays. I saw a play called The Shop at Sly Corner.
Could be.
Does that make any sense?
The Shop at Sly Corner.
The Shop at Sly Corner, yeah. And it was John Moffat, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. This will be 1940s. I knew John Moffat at the Oxford Playhouse.
It was right at the beginning of, the 50s, early 50s. And, and the last term at school, you had to try and get a job for what you wanted to do for your career. And I wanted to be an actress. And I did get a job. I got a job at the Playhouse. They wouldn't let me do it because it was a disgraceful profession, really.
Your parents wouldn't let you do it?
No, the school wouldn't.
The school. What did your parents think of you wanting to be an actress, Kathleen?
Oh, well, I agree with Maggie that you don't really know why. I can remember, I think I was 12 when I said to my parents that I was going to be an actress. And my family, we had no money. I mean, we all knew that we had to support ourselves, whatever. So they thought that this was not a good idea, to put it mildly. But at that time, I'd never even seen theater. I was in Caracas, Venezuela, man. So I think, Maggie, that it's books. I think that it's reading books and starting to visualize and see how characters move and speak and stuff that leads to the acting. My mother felt, I don't think she took me seriously. Well, my father died very suddenly when I was 17, so he died not approving, but never getting to see the results. But my mother wrote me a letter, I think when I was 50, and I was doing Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which I had waited years to be old enough to play. And she wrote me a letter that said she had to apologize, and she'd never understood really why or what I had wanted to do with the work, and she felt she did now, and she owed me an apology, which I don't think she did, but it was a gracious, lovely gift.
How were your parents, Maggie, reconciled to you becoming an actress?
They were baffled. They were totally baffled. But they'd already been baffled by my brothers, who they were 6 years older than me. But as I said, they got all these scholarships and things, and they went to they wanted to be architects, so they went to the School of Architecture, and I think that puzzled them somewhat. So they were used to being puzzled, but I think it was mostly, this will pass. I don't think anybody took people seriously at that time. They had much too much other things to occupy themselves with.
But you did persist. You did join the Oxford Playhouse Company.
Yes, I did.
You didn't go to drama school?
But I wasn't allowed to do this, and I can't remember what the part was that I got.
So you were the assistant stage manager. You did
Yes, I was with Eileen, and so we were. But
With
I did that for
Eileen Atkins?
Eileen Atkins. Yes, we were there, and but oh God, it was ghastly. It really was ghastly. Well, I mean, no, I just thought it was just so wonderful to be in a theatre, and it was. I don't know. I daren't go back to the Playhouse because I have such vivid memory, and I know it won't smell the same. It won't smell of all that size. What was it?
What's called size?
Yeah.
Sizing the set. You used to size the set.
Yes, and I did a lot of that, painting sets all night long, and my parents used to be so distressed because, of course, I used to have to walk home and things. It was ghastly.
So you start at the Oxford Playhouse and you stay there for several years. How do you actually start, Kathleen, as an actress? What actually happens? You're in your teens, you're in London, you're going to the theatre. Do you by any chance see Maggie in any of the things that she's in at the time, in the 60s?
No, I didn't get to.
Because it was one of her many glory
No,
years.
I would go to the National Shakespeare and the theater and all. I vividly remember the first piece, the first night we were in London, that we arrived in London. I snuck out of the hotel, and I got a seat in the gods, and I think it was Angela Lansbury doing Mame. And I think that was the first time it actually occurred to me that I could make my living this way. It wasn't that I could act. It was something that was a real profession. Because you see, in London, in England, it is considered a profession. Here, I think it's still not taken seriously as anything other than, oh, a lucky chance, something.
So how did you get into it? How did it actually happen? What turned you from being a schoolgirl into suddenly being an actress?
Well, after my father died, I came back to my mother's parents' home, which was our only home in the United States, in Springfield, Missouri, which was probably the greatest culture shock I have ever had in my life. God help me. Anyway, just joined the theater department. Got all the Shakespearean roles, thank you, because I still had too much of an English accent. And ran the box office, had a scholarship. Basically, I think one year I counted that there were 19 nights throughout the year, when I wasn't either in rehearsal or on stage. It was all I wanted to do. I had no idea what other people did or why. I had no desire to be part of any other culture, as it were. So I just lived at the theater.
So this is a very similar start. I mean, 20 years apart, but you both as teenage girls, you're just doing it. You're there, you're doing it. Because your first Shakespeare was Viola, 1952 at the Oxford Playhouse?
Yeah, that was because what a wonderful, wonderful fortune that we ended up in Oxford. So, and it was because in those days, because that's so long ago, they didn't have female members of OUDS, of the Oxford University Dramatic Society. So yes, I got the part.
Oh, this was a student production.
It was
so
a university production.
The male parts were played by undergraduates.
Yes.
And they had professional actresses to play the...
Well, hardly professional, because that was what I just left school.
But you were working for the Oxford Playhouse Company.
And it was wonderful, and there were wonderful actors who turned out to be the most amazing actors. Alas, gone now, but it was a stunning cast if you think of it. Think back to who played your part, Malvolio.
Yes.
Was John Wood. I mean, and he was. I mean, extraordinary.
I worked with him.
Amazing, and he was. And Ron Eyre was in it. Do you remember Ron Eyre?
Yeah.
Wonderful, sweet man.
So the pair of you, at the same age, you're doing this, working behind the scenes, sizing the sets, playing these parts, learning the lines. And in those days, was there still weekly rep there? Was it a weekly turnaround or once?
I think it
maybe
was
2 weeks?
two weekly.
Yeah.
And I was just a dog's body, you know, and I did, costumes. I was in the corner, around the prompt corner. That was, oh God, horrifying. Horrifying.
Was Ronnie Barker in the company?
Yeah,
at that
Ronnie
time?
was in the and that was I played a Chinese boy. Wouldn't be allowed,
No.
would it?
Feel free to apologise.
I played a Chinese boy, and I was in an opium den. It was in the letter.
Oh,
The
Somerset Maugham play,
yeah.
Yeah.
And I also played a Malayan woman.
What is the most unlikely part that you played, Kathleen, in those early days that you'd like to apologise and make a clean breast over?
I think it was like the only musical I ever had to do, thank God, Sweet Charity. And I was just appalling. I was just terrible. The worst job I ever did, I'll tell you that, was doing The Seagull up in Canada with Tommy House as what's his name? Anyway, and it was the only ingenue.
It's usually Trofimov. Say that. That'll do.
Who was playing it?
Tom Hulse.
Tommy Hulse. Tom Hulse. Yeah, was Treplev. Yeah, and it was the only time I ever tried to play an ingenue in my life. And I remember one night, you know, in the fourth act when she's saying, "I am a bird, I am a bird." Someone in the audience said, "Oh, I am a seagull, I am a seagull." Someone in the audience said, wait a minute. She thinks she's a bird? And I collapsed on the desk. Tommy quickly turned up stage. It was appalling. I was terrible.
Now, you were doing musicals, weren't you, Maggie, at that time? Because you were in Cinderella at the Playhouse.
Well, yeah, was I? Yes, I was. And Ronnie was in that.
But then you did, was it reviews there?
I did lots of reviews with university students, you know.
Ah.
And in fact, we did a review, and it was probably one of the first things that ever went to the Edinburgh Festival. It was
Cool.
must have been about what 52, 53. Anyway, we were in this tiny place called Riddle's Court. It's rather grand now. And we had some very, very good reviews. And one of the reviews wasn't as good as your review for Malvolio, I'm sure. But one of the reviews said that it was terrific. They loved it. It was Ned Sherrin and all that lot. And but he said it was the first time he'd got a theatre ticket with marmalade on it, because we were all in this place together and sort of hugger-mugger, but it was great.
But that led, in fact, to your breakout moment. It was the reviews that you were doing that led to you being noticed, wasn't it?
And going, yes.
And going into town.
And going into New York.
And New York, because you were on Broadway, 1954, 55, 56, around then?
56.
56, on Broadway.
Oh,
But a chit of a girl, 21, 22.
it was ghastly.
Why was it ghastly?
Well, because, first of all, I wasn't really paid very much. And so it was, I think it was $60 a week, which even then was sort of really, and I'd been booked into a hotel, which of course I could not pay for. And but I was rescued by Julie Andrews.
That's a good story to tell.
We were in the
Explain that. How did Julie Andrews
because I'd
rescue
been put
you?
in this hotel, and Julie was there with, she was then with Tony Walton, married to Tony Walton, and I was going up in the elevator and weeping, which is what I did all the time because I was in such distress about the whole thing. And they saw that I was weeping and in a terrible state, and they asked me to come and have tea with them, which I did. And then Julie's agent rescued me, because I didn't realise that I'd have to pay equity and my agent and my London agent.
Well, that was lovely of her, because she was by then a big star. She was
She was
in My Fair Lady already?
She was in My Fair Lady.
Amazing. Well, that's wonderful.
In fact, she must have been rehearsing it, because I was there when that opened. Or maybe, well, certainly was that year.
So that's your breakout moment. New Faces of 1956. You're on Broadway. You're 22. Your breakout moment, Kathleen, when does that come and how?
Well, I moved to New York straight out of university. So that was in 77. Within that year, I got an off Broadway role of going. But then I got a soap opera. And while I was doing the soap opera, I got my first Broadway role in Gemini. So I was 22, first time I was on Broadway.
And that's when you began to take off and people began to notice you got an agent. Was that easy getting an agent?
I got an agent the first 15 minutes I walked into an office, honestly, which I know. I mean, I teach now and my students ask me, you know, how to go about it. And I go, honestly, I have no idea, you know, because I don't know how. In those days, and they still do, equity requires agencies to allow some, you know, 1 day a month or something, a certain number of people to come in and do an audition for them. And so I did. I got into one of those equity forced auditions. And when I finished my piece, they asked me if I would sign. And I, of course, wanting to be extremely adult and wise, said, I'll take this to a lawyer, a standard equity contract, and make sure I'm not, you know, being taken advantage of, which was a waste of whatever money that cost. Anyway, and so I signed with that agency that week when I got to New York.
And who in those early days was your equivalent of Julie Andrews? Who was, as it were, the name who gave you your first boost, your first lift, your first bit of help?
Well, quite honestly, which unbeknownst to me at the time, there was a cadre of these women casting directors. Marion Dougherty, don't know if you recall, was the grand dame of casting, and she trained 3 younger women, Gretchen Rennell, Juliet Taylor, and Wally Nocita. And the 3 of them had a bet on who would place me in my first film. Again, I did not know any of this until Wally Nocita cast Body Heat. So she won.
Well, Body Heat is your big breakout moment, and we're going to have to come to that. And I'm already getting excited even thinking back to it, because the movies is how you, as it were launched onto the world, how people like me first became conscious of you. But I first became conscious of Maggie in the 1950s when she was appearing in reviews with Kenneth Williams.
Oh, my.
Who became a great friend of yours. And indeed, in fact, we first really knew each other through a mutual friendly with Kenneth. He was a remarkable...
You wrote such a lovely thing about Ken when he died.
Well,
you wrote a beautiful...
He was a lovely, lovely, complicated
he
person,
really
wasn't
was.
He? Yeah.
He really was.
And he loved you, and he loved doing impressions of you, and you did impressions of him, and you weren't quite sure who was doing the impression of who.
No, we were very, very large. But he was a really terrific actor, you know, a straight actor, and it just kind of vanished for him. And I think that was sad, because he really was extraordinary. But I mean, I suppose the most serious thing he did was the Dauphin in St. Joan with Siobhan McKenna, but he was amazing. And then it kind of
Yes.
got
Do you know who we
wasted,
mean
I
by
think.
Kenneth Williams? Did you ever see Kenneth?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was a very funny actor.
Oh, yes.
But he became, as he used to admit to himself, he painted himself into a corner by, as it were, using the funny voices and telling anecdotes. And in the end, he felt he'd wasted his gift on telling funny stories.
And he couldn't get out of
Yeah.
it. I mean, I was so lucky that I got out of review.
Yeah.
Mind you, everybody's out of it now, and it doesn't exist.
But you were huge in review.
I was so lucky to be able to get out of it, though, because I was in a corner.
Before we get to your movies, Kathleen, I want to get to Maggie joining the National Theatre, because for me, when I
Yes,
first,
please.
as it were, fell in love with her at a distance, I saw her in the reviews with Kent Williams. I saw her in a play by somebody called Jean Anouilh.
Oh, my goodness.
1950s. He was everywhere.
Yes.
There was a play by him on every street corner, wasn't there?
Yes, and Dottie was always in, Dorothy
Tootin. And you were in a play
Lark
called The
and
Rehearsal.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
At the
yeah,
Globe.
I do remember
Yeah.
it.
But then, suddenly, we find you, still in your early 20s, at the new National Theatre, founded initial director Laurence Olivier. How did you come, having been in reviews and in The Rehearsal, a play put on by Binky Beaumont, how did you come to be chosen to be in the National Theatre Company?
Because before that, I was at the Old Vic when it was before it turned into the National. When it was the Old Vic, in a company with Judy Dench. Judy Dench and Sir Lawrence had seen me in the Double Dealer.
Mm.
And that's why he thought I would. I don't know. I mean,
Did you have to go and audition for him, or did you just...
No, I got I got a letter asking me, excuse me, if I would go there, and I said no. I absolutely. I mean, the thought of because they'd asked me to do Othello, to be in Othello. And I thought, I absolutely can't do that. I can't. I was so frightened. It was way beyond anything I could contemplate. And so I said no. And then my Bev, who I was with at the time, he said, don't be so silly. You've got to. You've absolutely got to. So I had to write back and say, I'm so sorry. I said I wouldn't. Yes, I will.
And it wasn't too late. They were ready to have
It wasn't too late.
So you end up
It was just
playing Desdemona to Laurence Olivier's
it was
Othello.
so ridiculous.
And people, younger people who are watching this, will not believe this. It was extraordinary. It was the most phenomenal thing. As a member of the audience, I saw it several times. It was phenomenal.
But it wouldn't happen now.
It wouldn't happen now. But I'm quite glad it happened then, because he was brilliant, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He was extraordinary.
Was-
He was truly extraordinary. And you know, there was one night when he was truly, truly amazing. And I remember him saying, I don't know what I did. Because it was extraordinary for him. And it was amazing. And we weren't in London then. We were in Birmingham, I think. We opened there.
I think we all have those performances where every note of your voice comes out right. Every gesture is. I mean, you somewhere in there, you're sitting in there going, I don't know why, but I'm just gonna write it.
But it doesn't happen often.
Just stay out of the way, you know?
Tonight's the night. It just happens. So we've got Maggie in her early 20s is suddenly appearing at the National Theatre with Laurence Olivier as Desdemona. Next thing, she's, I think, were you Hilda Wangel in The Master Builder? It's that sort of
I
thing.
can't remember. Did Othello open, or was it, I think, the recruiting officer?
Oh, the recruiting officer, were you in that?
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So that's her breakout moment in terms of, you know, it's amazing. and it's being amazing with the best. And I want in a minute the story of the time he knocked you out.
Oh no!
But you were a knockout in Body Heat. How did that come about?
Well, I tried to audition for the film in New York, but it was being cast by two men who did not allow me to audition. They felt that I had no film experience and it would be a waste of Larry Kasdan's time and theirs. So 3 months passed, and I was flown out to LA to audition for a different film. And that's when Wally Nisita, who was located in Los Angeles, called me in and said that this role had still not been cast. They had still not found the woman to play Maddie Walker, and would I please come read? And I said, yes, of course. So I did, and they said, well, they want me to come back the next day. And the first day I was all gussied up and glamorous and, all the false eyelashes and the tight dress and everything else. And so I thought, the hell with it. The second day I went in blue jeans and a t-shirt and, thought I better give him a chance to see who I really am. And Larry handed me a scene to read, which I hadn't seen before. And he just asked me to read it cold, which is fine with me. And when I finished, he said, I never thought I'd hear that out loud the way I hear it in my head. And that was that. Then he set me up for a screen test with Bill Hurt, and that went well. And we went on.
So your first movie is in a leading role. And it is, well, I mean, this is bizarre. And it's intimate as well, isn't it? I mean, was there anything that had prepared you for this? You had any idea what you were doing?
No, in fact, I was lucky in the sense that this was Larry Kasdan's first time directing. So he was glued next to the cinematographer, saying, why that light, why that angle, why that lens, and I'm glued next to Larry, trying to hear everything the cinematographer is saying, trying to absorb all the lessons I can, right away, because I had no idea, why that lens, why that setup, why that. But I am a quick learner, I'm happy to say. And I just gobbled up everything I could learn. And now, if I were to look back, if I were to see it again, I would see that a lot of that I played more in terms of like a stage relationship than a camera relationship at times. But boy, did I learn, huh?
And who are your leading men in that?
That was William Hurt.
Yeah. And did you get on well?
Very well. Yeah, we worked together with Larry Kasdan again in Accidental Tourist. And the three of us, Larry just looked at us and said, God, I'd forgotten how good you guys are together, And it was, it's a beautiful film, Accidental Tourist.
I've just been reading your book. I love it. You are a very passionate person, and you enter into each of these performances is done with complete conviction. You're there. If I have to be naked, I'm naked. Yeah. If I have to love you, I love you. If I have to be angry, you're just there doing it. And
yeah, I don't. As insecure as I may be about my personal choices at times, or my own, my private life, for some reason, when I step on the stage, I'm absolutely sure of what I'm doing and why. I have no idea why.
Great. Isn't that wonderful, Maggie?
It's absolutely great. But I would be so, I'm always too, I don't know, I feel restricted. I don't. Well, I suppose it has happened that I've been able to really. But I couldn't, for example, I couldn't do a thing like The Graduate. I just would remain too kind of
Frozen in the wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and stupid and full of
In those,
angst, and I
so
wouldn't be
much of
brave
that
enough.
play- so much of that play was comedy, and I love being funny. And other than the one time that she drops the towel, which is all of 23 seconds, as I recall,
Yeah, it was.
she's actually pretty funny.
going back, Maggie, to those early days, who were the people that you learnt from as you were doing this? You were in the famous Much Ado About Nothing, which I loved. That's Franco Zeffirelli, wasn't it?
Yes,
That was hilarious and wonderful.
it was a joyous
I
production.
mean, who were you learning from then?
Everybody. I mean, everybody around me, every single person, because that world was. Well, it's a big jump from review into
The real
into
thing.
that. But of course, you learn all the time. You learn. You learn. I mean, I learned so much from Judy, from all these people that I work with, and they all seem to be so at ease with it that I was always sort of. I always felt. Well, I know what they call it, imposter. What is it?
Imposter syndrome.
Yes, I felt that. I still feel it. I cannot believe that it. I look back and I can't believe that a lot of it has happened.
Well, we find it hard to believe, being with you, that some of these great names, like Laurence Olivier, people you actually worked with, who directed you, in the case of Olivier, because you must tell the story, knocked you out on one occasion.
Yes, he did.
Is that true?
cross. Well, he was cross.
He was
with
cross
me.
on stage.
He was furious
what
with
happened?
me. But I didn't want to do. They were talking about doing a production of The Skin of Our Teeth, and that was Vivian Lee's great. So I kept saying no. I honestly, I don't want. I don't want to. Anyway, he was cross with me one night, and I remember him saying "out, devil," and striking me across the face, and I passed out.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Did you have to be carried into the wings? I mean,
Iago helped me off. Frank Finlay helped me. He was meant to dislike me intensely, but suddenly rushed to my aid.
Oh my God.
that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But he was so angry.
Did he apologise afterwards?
Yes, of course he did. Of course he did.
Did you have mixed feelings
Because
about him?
I'd said it was the only time. It was the only time I'd seen stars at the National.
As you came round seeing
As I came round.
Oh dear.
And I had a big kind of black mark on my.
Oh, from his makeup, of course.
Yeah.
Because he was all blacked up. So he hit you, and that.
And I had it. But it was, of course, it was all ended, fine.
Kathleen, have you had a similar experience? I hope not.
No, I have not. I once hit someone on stage,
Oh dear, who was
but
that?
he deserved it.
Ah,
Oh,
tell us.
Who?
Tell us. This is tell all time.
It was in Virginia Woolf.
oh,
And, the young man playing Nick, gets a little carried away, sort of trying to embrace, and is all over, Martha at some point, and he bit me in the neck, and I just I went.
of course.
It was reflex.
Because he allowed himself to get carried away. Is that
believe
what's called
so,
method
yes.
acting? Do you believe in this method thing? Are you one of those?
Not at all. Absolutely not. Got nothing to do with it.
One more person before we get on to the movies. Noel Coward. See, she's known them all. She's worked with them all.
Oh,
Noel
Well,
Coward.
not all of them, and
Well,
they're all somewhere else now.
Well, yes, but no, but yes, exactly. So you're our only
That's-
contact. That's why we're in touch with you.
Oh,
we
don't.
can meet the greats via you.
It's too sad.
You were in his famous production of Hay Fever at the National with Dame Edith Evans.
That's right.
And I've always understood that Noel Coward was a very nice human being.
Oh, he was lovely.
Tell us a little bit about what he was like.
Well, he was just lovely and very funny. and he was very understanding and kind, really, really kind. But God, he was funny. And he always seemed to say the right thing at exactly the right time. I don't know how that happened. To have that kind of swift mind. He was lovely.
Now, you, great playwright, Edward Albee.
Ah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you both appeared in major Albee plays.
I will boast of something that
Good.
Edward was difficult in many ways, and he didn't like many people, and he could be very, very nasty, quite honestly. But for some reason, he loved me. And the night our last night on Broadway, I came back after the curtain, and there was a note propped up on my dressing room table from Edward, and it said, "You are the reason I'm a playwright."
Wow.
And I'm telling you, that is in my safe. Yeah, I sobbed. I just couldn't. It's wonderful. You know?
That's
Fantastic.
terrific.
That's fantastic.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
Because you did Three Tall Women?
Yes, he was very cross with me because
No.
I mean, the woman in three Tall is his mother, and he kept saying I wasn't nasty enough because she was apparently really unpleasant and vile. And I said, I think she must have been a saint, frankly, because you're so mean and horrible. Yeah. But he was furious because I mean, I thought she was funny, but I didn't think he liked that very much.
No.
But he was a sweet man, actually.
He could be.
He could be, couldn't
very
he?
Sweet.
But I have to say, Maggie is always very generous about people that not everybody is generous about. Most people, if you talk about Rex Harrison, for example, who was a meticulous and beautiful performer, in my view. I loved all his film work and his stage work too. But every person I've ever talked to about him has got rather negative stories to tell. That famous 1956 production of My Fair Lady.
Oh, I thought he was...
He was wonderful.
Immaculate.
He was immaculate. But you know the famous story of him coming out at the end of the performance. You must know this story, with Stanley Holloway at the end of the performance.
No.
There's a whole line of people waiting for his autograph. And he's in a mood, doesn't feel like giving his autograph. So he stalks past the crowd, gets into his limousine, and people are all there with their programs, hoping to have them signed. One of them taps him on the arm as he goes by, and he ignores them. And Stanley Holloway says that must be the first time in recorded history of us seeing the fan hitting the shit.
Oh! Whoa!
And the story went right the way around the world because, of course, people felt there was an element of truth in it. And he was clearly, I mean, having spoken to a couple of his wives, he was clearly a difficult person. But you appeared in a film with him and you liked him.
I liked him enormously. I just thought that he was so true. I wasn't married to him or involved with him. I mean, that must have been tricky because I was when we were filming Rachel, Roberts was Mrs. Harrison at the time. But I found him just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, that's good. We put the record straight. Now, who is the most difficult person you have worked with, Kathleen?
Actor or director?
Well, you can give us the whole raft.
The cast.
Actor, it would have to be Nicolas Cage because he was, in Peggy Sue Got Married. It was his first leading role, and I think that he was very anxious to detach himself from his relationship, his family relationship, from Francis Ford Coppola. So, Francis would suggest a direction, and automatically, Nick would refuse it because he had to prove himself, separate, which is pretty dumb. I thought it was pretty stupid. So, I just thought, well, there's not going to be any help there. We'll just have to do this without him.
When you're in a movie, do you do what you want to do, or do you do first what the director is asking you to do, and then do what you want to do? How does it work?
Oh no, you do what the director asks for, unless you quite disagree. And that happened once with Francis Ford Coppola. I had sometimes I dream of the scene I'm going to do the next day. Yeah, and this had been a very vivid dream, and so I came on set, and the camera was in the wrong place, and I said it's in the wrong place, and Francis said, "What are you talking about? This is where I'm putting the camera." And I said, No, really, it'd be so much better over there from that angle. And he said, what the hell? I said, look, I'll give you as many takes as you want, with the camera here. Will you give me 2 takes with the camera where I think it should be? And he very graciously and probably, I don't know, said, yes, all right, fine. 2 takes. And mine is the take in the film.
Yay!
You see, that's something I could never do that.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that, would you? You wouldn't.
I could never do that in a million years.
She got into the movies in this film Body Heat, and we're going to hear some more of your triumphs in a moment. How did you get into the movies? Because yes, essentially in the early 1960s, you are a stage actress. How does the movies happen?
I was put under contract to. It was called ABC, but they didn't ever use me because I was working in the theatre. The person who done all that was a man called, I think it was Bob Letton, whatever his name was, doesn't matter. And he said, well, we don't know what to do with you. And I said, well, I'm working in the theatre. You could come and see me. And he said, no, I can't do that. I get claustrophobia in the theatre. So I said, well, I'm so sorry, but then I don't know. But then I got the part in VIPs,
yeah.
and that paid for my contract. So
just doing that one film.
Just doing that one film. So
film.
I wasn't sort of paid. That went to
pay off your
pay
debt
ABC or whatever they were.
And
then so long ago, for God's sake.
It is a long time ago.
Jesus.
But then you had all these. You had a quick succession of movies in the mid-60s. Yes, I've got the Pumpkin Eater, Young Cassidy.
Oh, Pumpkin Eater, but that was half a day's work.
Well, never mind. It's in the list. It's there. You did it. Oh, What a Lovely War, which I loved.
But Kathleen's talking about serious film.
Well, we get to your serious film, your first big serious film, in my view. Still one of my favourites, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie.
Oh God! Yes. You see, that's half a century ago.
It is, but isn't it good to have made
a classic
film?
It's not silent, isn't it?
It's the most wonderful film. Is it one of your favourite
films?
Kathleen.
Maggie, I now have 42 years in the business. You have 60?
142.
Yeah. Anyway.
60 movies, 70 stage roles is what she has.
We're still here. We're still working. And we're still doing good work. So what does it matter how long something ago was?
Absolutely.
It was just that I was back at Pinewood,
Yeah.
I mean, recently, and when I thought how long ago it was that we did that, I couldn't believe it. That's horrific.
If you had, Kathleen, to pluck from your movies the ones that you want to have kept in the capsule, in the time capsule, in the case of Maggie, there could be so many.
No.
There could be, starting a long time ago
No,
with the
no.
Prime Minister and Brodie. But what would you put in your time capsule so that, 1,000 years from now, Kathleen Turner, what are you going to see? What are the 3 movies going to be?
I would say that one of my true talents is judging material, is choosing the projects that I would do. And so I can honestly say, with one exception, which wasn't my fault, I am proud of every piece that I have done. I think if I had to choose, I would choose Peggy Sue Got Married. I would choose, I think, War of the Roses. And perhaps Serial Mom.
Ah,
Very good.
yeah.
And what
Yeah.
reasons? I wanted to talk about Michael Douglas anyway, but what reasons are you choosing those?
Well, Peggy Sue Got Married, I think, is truly a beautiful piece. That is probably the closest persona to me, as a character. War of the Roses was just devilish. It just got so down and dirty. I just had a ball. And Serial Mom is almost surrealistic. That's extraordinarily different pieces, I guess.
I love the way you say you're a good judge, which I'm sure you are. Look at your career. And you only have one regret. What is the one that you regret?
Oh, let's not. Let's
Oh.
not.
Okay, well, let's not. We won't need it. Very good. What about you? You've got to pick your 3. I mean, look at the way. Are you a good chooser, Maggie?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I just do what I'm told. I don't usually. I don't think I've ever. I've always been asked to do something. I haven't ever, and I've never been in a position to choose. I just have a vision of people with piles of scripts. People say, "Why did you do this?" and "What made you do that?" And I actually do what's turned up.
She loves to say this. I'm not going to bother to ask her what her 3 films would be because she'll just sort of say, and dismiss it, unless you want to choose 3 in the time capsule, 3 of yours.
Well, I tell you, there's something weird about films because unless the first things I did were inconsequential, so I never felt that I was in a film. And when you start, you're just a person who appears for a morning or whatever, and you don't feel that you belong. Of course, you don't belong because you've no idea what they're doing. So the only time you feel that you're making a movie is when you're involved in it and you do more than nod in for half a day's filming. So that was the only time. But it must. I think it was probably Brodie, but it was all so overwhelming that I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was doing.
Is that what you got your Oscar for?
Yes.
Yeah. Not bad. She's got so many awards.
I do remember that.
You do. Did you go?
No, I couldn't go.
No, you were busy somewhere else.
Lord Olivier wouldn't let me go.
Very good.
Never mind.
But you couldn't.
We were opening the Beau Stratagem actually that same night.
You would not have time to go to collect all the awards you have received. You have received lots of awards. Well done, Golden Globes, Oscar nomination,
all over the place.
All over the place. But she has received so many because she's a little bit older. You have come on. nobody has received, virtually nobody in the world has received.
We're
Lord of the Rings
talking
Award.
half a century here.
Yeah, of course you've collected them over time. That's very good. One of my favourite parts of you played is on television when you were in Friends.
Ah,
That was memorable.
it's just silly.
It was silly.
I didn't know. I'll tell you the thing
Remind
about that
people
was
who don't know
I had
what part
I
you
was
played.
I was touring with a play Tallulah, and my dresser was gay and loved to go to these clubs where there were, the RuPaul drag, kind of thing, and so knowing I was going to do that role, I said to him that I wanted to go with him. I wanted to go see some of these clubs, and the people, the performers, the drag queens were so funny and so nasty, so hard. The humor was cruel but funny. So we do the first read through on Friends, and I think I'm being true to the genre, and they all run off to a corner and huddle, and they send one poor victim over to say, it's wonderful. It's great. Oh my God. Oh, wow. But could you could you could you be a little nicer? I said, yes. Yeah, I can do it nicer.
Now,
Holly television.
before we go, I want to ask you if there are things that you want to ask Maggie before I ask you for some tips and secrets, because you are a drama teacher, among other things. Is there anything that you want to say to Maggie or to ask her?
No, I'd like to say that I love her very much. I love you, Maggie. And I have treasured all the times that we've had together, and the phone calls and any of the and just your being here and doing what you do for so long. It's been a beacon to me and to so many, I think, other actresses. But the old saying, I want to grow up to be like you. Well, I'm grown up, but oh honey, I cannot. You are such a beacon,
Oh, stop.
to me. I just think you're wonderful.
Oh,
Isn't that lovely?
dear Kathleen.
Yes. Well done.
I'm so glad we were back to back in those theatres.
Me too.
That was the best. Otherwise, what would have happened?
I was terribly tempted. You know that between those two theaters, there is a long tube, a long hole. And evidently people used to pass messages by poking it through this whole backstage from one theater to the other. So I was always terribly tempted to write out something and find a pole that was long enough, but I never could.
We've got through this conversation without mentioning Downton Abbey
Ah!
or Harry Potter.
Oh!
Isn't that extraordinary?
How about that?
Whereas the people in the street, do they come up to you still and say, when is Downton coming back? Are you still in Harry Potter?
No, I haven't been out for a very long time.
That's one of the reasons, maybe.
No, and we're all disguised now. It's quite good. But no, it used to be small people who did that.
Not
Little
bad.
people.
Good. Now, look, before we go, what is your... I know with this series, we've had a lot of drama students watching. We know this. Do you have... I mean, you teach drama now.
I think that's great.
Yes, I'm teaching it on Zoom. I have learned a great deal. I take 14 students for 3-hour sessions. And because I cannot see... they have to stand during our sessions, because sitting, I don't think, adds much to your ability to act. But in any case, But usually I'm the kind of actor in the room where I want to know what their feet are doing. You know, I work with the whole body, and so I can't. So what I've learned though, and have taken from Zoom teaching, is how you must, it focuses on the words, on the scripts. I mean, that's what you really have to work with. And that's been rather fascinating.
And what are you up to next, Kathleen?
Well, I have another class starting on the 22nd. But the Kaminsky method, which we just finished, is coming out with Michael Douglas on Netflix. And I am an ex-wife. It was a very bad marriage. It's a bit of War of the Roses goes on, but funnier. Well, I can't say that. Any case, going back to work with Michael again was just easy. You know, Maggie, you go back
Yeah.
to work with someone you've worked with before, and it's what do they say, like slipping on an old shoe?
It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Who for you has been like that? Michael Redgrave used to say that when he first worked with Edith Evans, it was a totally new experience. It was feeling safe for the first time. You walked onto the stage and you suddenly felt completely at ease. You didn't need to think anymore about, oh, I'm on here acting. You just were with her. Is there anyone that you can...
I didn't find that with Edith Evans, I must say.
Well,
That
you-
was
you
far
caught-
from the way I felt with her.
You caught her towards the end of her career because she was having difficulty with the lines, maybe.
Yes, she was, but it was the second time she'd done that part.
Oh.
I'd done it with her before on because I played all those ladies in Hay Fever.
This
But
is
there
Judith,
was a television.
She's playing Judith Bliss.
Yes, there was a television
Version.
that she did with George Devine playing.
This is the on a clear day you can see.
No, that was with
Yeah.
when he directed it. Yes, on a very clear day you can see
Beaumont and Fletcher
Beaumont
and
Marlowe, Beaumont and
yeah,
Fletcher.
that's it.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's it. So no, we were talking about Edith Evans earlier, and remind me of her little mantra. Edith Evans famously played Rosalind in As You Like It at Stratford at the, I think, at the end of the 1930s, with the very young Michael Redgrave as her Orlando. It was at that time.
And she was older.
She was a mature.
I can't
actress by
remember
then.
what she, but no, I'm trying to I think it was Noel who told me
This story.
that, but yes, but before she went on, and I do it myself now, she used to say to herself in the wings before Rosalind, I am young and beautiful and my breasts are firm. Pretty good, isn't it?
We're not going to top that, I don't think, are we? Look, Kathleen, it's wonderful speaking to you in New York. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for...
Are you coming over? Are you coming
A real
over?
pleasure. As soon as I bloody well can, man.
Good.
Good. We want
Can't
to see.
wait.
We'll recreate this in the flesh. Thank you for your
All
time
right.
and your genius. Maggie Smith, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Oh.
all. Let's all blow kisses at everyone. And thank you, if you're watching, for supporting the Royal Theatrical Fund.